Hello and welcome to the Trucking History Channel. Today I want to do something a little different. I want to talk about motor freight in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Through the years, you'll see some changes that were made in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And it's interesting to go through the history. So, let's look at 1915 to 1920 first. July 7th, 1920. 3 large motor trucks laden with furniture for a new amusement parlor to be installed in the second floor of the outlet building at 10 South Center Street arrived from Wilmington, Delaware, in the care of 3 chauffeurs. Chauffeurs is what they originally called truck drivers back in the early days of trucking. And that's why very early before CDLs, they were called chauffeur's license. July 20th, July 20th of 1920. Marger Brothers, that's spelled Mauger, received their new motor freight truck from the John Yessie family factory in Pottsville. So apparently there was a John Yessie factory that made trucks in Pottsville. I'll look that up and give you some information about it sometime. August 6th, 1920. This is interesting. County commissioners anticipate strong demand for a $971,000 bond issue for the new state aid highway between Holmesville and Girardville, and to the 22 concrete bridges to keep pace with the heavy wear and tear from the motor freight truck traffic, which requires roads and bridges to be built with reinforced concrete instead of dirt roads and wooden bridges. So way back in 1920, they were anticipating having to make roads better for the heavy trucks. Here's an interesting one from September of 1917. Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce is planning to inaugurate motor truck freight lines between Philadelphia and New York. 2 important cities to be connected with motor truck lines, and that was as early as 1917. May 24th, 1920. 1 man was killed and 12 hurt today when a Lehigh Valley motor truck and trailer on the way to Delano crashed into the rear end of a slow-moving freight train near Tartman. So apparently in 1920 there was a company called Lehigh Valley. Now I don't know if that was connected with the Lehigh Valley Railroad, but I'll check into that and I'll let you know. September 18th of 1920. Painted notices posted on the Washington Street Bridge and the Schuylkill River Bridge between Palo Alto and Pottsville give fair warning that any person who rides or drives at a faster speed than a walk will be fined $5. The bridge has been used by freight trucks and teams drawing heavy loaded wagons. And further in the article, it said that citizens would be responsible for reporting whatever truck or horse team went faster than a walk, and half of the $5 would be split with the snitch. Let's move on to 1921 to 1925. January 1922. Protests against issuance of a certificate of authority to Pyramid Haulage Company to conduct a motor freight service between Harrisburg, York, Lancaster, and points in Juanita Cumberland, and Likens Valley were made by the Pennsylvania, Reading, and Susquehanna River and Western Railroads. So I've talked about before where everybody who applied for a certificate of authority, whether it be state, in this case in 1922, or even after 1935 with the Interstate Commerce Commission, anybody that wanted to get a certificate had to have a hearing. And during that hearing, anybody who opposed that application could present their case. And apparently that's what happened here. In 1922, there was a company in Pottsville, Pennsylvania called Rotors Freight and Motor Service, and they were located at 25 North 6th Street. All right, let's move on to 1926 to 1930. Now it gets interesting. August 19th, 1930, there was a newspaper article about Motor Freight Express. A lot of you may remember that company being called MFX. But they were capitalized at $150,000, and they filed an application with the Pennsylvania Public Service Commission for a certificate to operate between Harrisburg, York, and Baltimore, and between Hanover and Reading via York, Columbia, Lancaster, and Ephrata, and between Harrisburg and Philadelphia. They were anticipating a big operation. In the application, it also sought permission to acquire the certificates that were then held by Baltimore Transfer Company. And here's something I didn't know. At the time, and this was in 1930, Motor Freight Express was actually a subsidiary of Pennsylvania Railroad. Now I know, and I've mentioned this in other videos, Pennsylvania Railroad was very early into buying trucking companies and using the trucking companies to haul freight between stations and wherever it was going. At one time, Pennsylvania Railroad had many applications to acquire trucking companies in the early days of the ICC. Here's another one, July 1929. Tri-State Motor Freight, a company run by B.R. Blackman, was granted a certificate to haul freight between Philadelphia, Riegelsville, Easton, Bethlehem, Allentown, and Phillipsburg, New Jersey. 1929, a very early Pennsylvania company that went into New Jersey too. Here's one, February 13th, 1932. Banks & Son of Pottsville has been granted a certificate to operate between Pottsville and Shenandoah, Mahoney City, Frackville, Minersville, Centralia, and Philadelphia. It's interesting that Banks & Son was actually operated by Elizabeth Banks, a woman who was running a trucking company way back in 1932. And for years, Banks & Son grew. They had newspaper ads daily in the Pottsville, Pennsylvania newspaper advertising for moving and general freight. and here's the last one I have for you. August 1935. Alto Trucking Company Incorporated, which was located at 105 East Washington Street in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. They also had a terminal in West Hazleton, Pennsylvania at 311 Putnam Street. And they served all these cities: Pittston, Mahoney City, Shepton, Oneida, Jetta, Hometown, Hazleton, West Hazleton, and Wilkes-Barre. So there you go. There's early history centered around Pottsville, Pennsylvania in the early days of trucking. And you'll only find it here on the Trucking History channel. If you're not a subscriber, I hope you will, because we cover a lot of very early trucking history that, as far as I've been able to tell, nobody on YouTube is doing. So subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. See you again in the next video.